All right, so this is part of a series where we're trying to build a web part that allows you to build adaptive cards, but we're imbuing AI power into it. And these web parts are designed to have all the cool features that a perfect web part should have. Let's talk about, oh, nope, wrong thing. There you go. All right, so we've already built the web part, we've built the custom property pane, and now what we are doing is we're going to show you how to provide UI theme awareness. What do we mean by that? Well, let's show you a demo. All right, so this is the good old adaptive card web part that we built. We're not going to spend too much time on the adaptive card today, but the one thing that I should highlight is you'll notice that we don't really have any concept of colors really in the adaptive card, right? We have some, for example, somewhere we got some buttons, like here we have actions, but we're not ever specifying what color these actions are or anything like that, because that is provided by the adaptive card. The whole technology of adaptive card is it adapts to the environment that it's in. But one of the things that you need to do is to tell it where to get the colors, where to get the fonts, and things like that. So this exact same web part that I did here, and by the way, this is a picture of Bo dressed as a turkey, just to make it Thanksgiving-y. So if I look at this web part in another site with a different theme, you'll notice that immediately the web part adapts. And if I go through different themes here, you'll see that they adapt automatically. Now, this is cool for themes where all the web parts on the page are changing colors. But what if I want to create a section and I want to change the colors of a section? So for example, let's take this section here. Let's change the settings of that section. And let's say, actually, no, this section is going to be neutral shading, going to use soft shading, or is going to use strong shading. You'll notice that the colors of the text is changing to increase the legibility, as well as the colors of the buttons and things like that. That's actually provided by the section color. But wait, if you order now, we can use fancy backgrounds like these ones here. Now, the adaptive cards don't know how to deal with that. So how do we tell it how to deal with these changing colors? Well, let's move on. So first of all, let's talk about themes, right? Themes is the ability to have different color sets for the exact same look and feel, but just different colors. You can actually find in your CSS, instead of hard coding a color like this, where you can say the button background color is this, whatever color this is, you can actually say, no, I actually have a theme color that I can use, and it's the primary color. And you can even specify a default theme. That's built in within your SharePoint web parts and your SharePoint pages. You can actually go to the Microsoft documentation to get the list of theme colors that are available, and there's quite a few, as you can see. We're not going to go through all of them now. Now, there's another thing that you can use. If you want to understand how these theme colors work, you can actually go to the theme designer, which allows you to actually import a theme from an existing theme. Then you can actually specify the primary colors, text colors, and background colors, and it will help you preview what those colors are going to look like. And then at the bottom, it'll actually show you all your theme slots that are available for the various themes. One being the fabric palette slots, which shows you all different colors. But another thing that will show you is semantic slots. And semantic slots, semantic color is basically a color that shows it's the meaning of a color. So for example, in the semantic slots here, we have our default colors with things like the the background and things like that. It's not telling us a weird color name like neutral or something like that. It's actually telling us what if I applied this color to the body, what would it look like? And so you get something like this, where you get different semantic slots with the different themes and the different colors applied to different things. Now, those semantic colors also apply to individual elements. So you have different colors for links, for example, for buttons, and various other things like inputs, lists, and things like that. Now, that applies to everything that's on the page. But if you actually specify a section with different theme colors or different backgrounds, it the theme color is not applied to that individual web part. It's actually applied to all the web parts on the page, but the semantic color for the section is applied to the web parts within that section. How do we do that with code? Let's show you. Oops. All right, so this is the first thing you do in your web part manifest is you actually tell it that you want to support theme variants. That's what's going to help SharePoint know that it should notify the web parts when the theme are changing or the sections are changing. Next thing you need to do, I know it looks like a lot of code, is you should capture at least your theme provider and probably your theme variant, so you'll be using it a little later. By default, you have one that detects whether the web part is in dark theme or not. You can use that. I just didn't remove it in my code. And then when you initialize the web part, you want to capture the theme provider. And you want to basically store that somewhere. And you want to capture the theme variant. So again, the various flavors of that theme that are applied for that particular section. And then you want to use an event handler that says if the theme has changed, you'll get the current theme that's been applied, and then you just want to skip doing anything if you didn't get a theme, and then you want to query things like, is it a dark theme? What are the semantic colors for this theme? And there you go. And then you can do things like, in this case, I'm actually creating CSS variables for the various semantic colors that I want. But that's boring. Let's move on to the next part here. All right. One of the things that I forgot when I first grabbed the screenshot here is that you're supposed to you should probably store the theme variant so that you can refer to it a little later. Now, when you render your web part, you want to make sure that you're passing all the information about the theme, including the theme variant here, because the other components, when they will receive that theme variant, they'll be able to adapt. Next thing you can do is in your CSS or your SCSS. This is one of the things that I will do is I'll import the references.scss, which has predefined variables, SAS variables that have all those cool theme colors. So you don't have to worry about the fancy square brackets, theme equals blah, blah, blah. It's actually provided to us as a SAS variable. For example, the neutral color, neutral primary, and so on and so forth. Now, what I'm also doing is I'm defining SAS variables or CSS variables for the semantic colors that I will receive from that background. And I'm not going to go through them because there's a bazillion of them. But what it does is it actually sends all this information to the CSS. Now, here's the problem. Let's look at this web part here. When I render a web part, it actually creates a section for that web part. And because I've made my web part, I've called my web part builder, it defines the class as web part builder. But then it adds a weird thing. It adds an underscore and then some random text. Why is that? Well, that's because if you have the same web part on the page and each web part is in a different section, you want the web part to have different CSS classes. You don't want, dropping one web part on the page overrides all the styles of everybody else. Now, I've named my class for the adaptive card viewer. I've named it custom adaptive card viewer. Yeah, I know I was being really original, but let's look at what happens again when I drop a component. So not just a web part, but a component within that web part. It also gets its own CSS class name, and because I specified it, but it also appends random stuff here. And again, that's to make sure that every adaptive card viewer component on the page, even if I had multiple on the same web part, are uniquely styled and they don't override each other. Because imagine if you dropped one web part that had a color and then you dropped another web part somewhere on the page and all of a sudden it overrode all the changes, all the colors. That's not good. Now here's the problem though. When I embed the adaptive card viewer, it actually renders, this is a control that's built by Microsoft, right? It renders its own container and it provides its own CSS classes. And you'll notice that they don't have suffixes. They're not made unique. So in theory, if I drop the same component on the page and I overrode those styles, I would actually override every component in the page equally. That's not good. And you'll see there's a few more things like that, the text block and the horizontal separator. But here's what I did. I do have a custom adaptive card viewer class, but what I can do is I can actually say everything that's inside of my custom adaptive card viewer web part, I want to override the global scope of these individual classes. And so what that means is it's not going to randomize the class names. It's going to apply the styles here. And the cool thing about that is when I specify the individual class like that, because they're within my web part, they will actually adopt those fancy styles, even if I have multiple copies of that web part in multiple sections. Now, here's the other problem, is that adaptive cards are trying to be friendly, and they try to actually specify the styles directly on the component, on the element. They're not using CSS classes for a lot of things. So you'll see here, it's overriding the font weight, the color, and things like that. So how do we deal with that? And again, you might have the same issue with your own components or third-party components. So one of the things that I do is I actually, when it's time to render the component, I merge something called the host configuration. That's specific to adaptive cards, but I take the default host configurations and then I actually look to see if I have styles and default styles. And then I get the container styles and I get all those variables, all those theme variants and things like that. And I applied them one by one to the individual styles that adaptive cards has. Now, there's hundreds of styles here, so I'm not going to go through all of them, but that's a technique that I use to make sure that when I change things, it is able to adapt to that. And then all I need to do is when I render the adaptive card, I get that host configuration and I pass it to my adaptive card rendering. So what are the key takeaways here? Use themes in your CSS, right? You can actually use the theme variables or the Sass variables to do that. Make sure that your web parts are theme aware, not just based on the page theme, but the section, the background of that section as well. If you're going to use global because you can't change the class name or CSS class names, just use it with caution, right? Make sure that you scope your global CSS classes within your individual web parts. And probably more importantly, always test your web parts by having more than one on a page. All right, so that was our UI theme awareness. Next time, we will talk about actually using AI within our layout creation to make our web parts fancy. That's it for me. For more information, use the links here. And back to you, David.